Hi, so we're going to have a little look around Scratch, and the first thing we're going to do is delete the cat. And that leaves us really with just the background, no sprites. As soon as you go into the background, you've got backdrops, you've got sounds attached to that, and obviously its own very own script area. First thing we're going to do, just going to highlight the name of the game and type in a new game so that we can save that quickly and efficiently. And then we're going to add our first sprite. There's a whole catalogue of different images. We're going to go to animals, and I'm going to find a top-down view of our mouse. Click the mouse, choose OK, and he's slap bang in the middle of our stage area here, and we're just going to shrink him down, otherwise he'd be a ginormous mouse. So use the shrink tool there, and we can move him around on the stage and position him where we want him. We can actually do that by code a little later on. Against that sprite, there are various different costumes. You can attach different sounds to him. So we've got all our different code blocks. So all of those color-coded blocks are really nice and easy to find once you've used Scratch for a while, but have a little explore. So what we're going to do here is put some basic controls in. So when the green flag is clicked, forever, so keep on checking to see if a certain key is pressed. Now, just having a look around at the different things, the different code blocks, it can be a little bit tricky to find exactly what you look for, what you want. If you click on those drop down arrows in the different places, you'll find different options. So there is a hat there when this key is pressed, but the way we're doing it with the green flag and the forever loop is just a lot smoother. So have a good explore through the color-coded blocks for your scripts, and slowly but surely as you work on your projects, you'll get a feel and you'll know where those blocks are a lot quicker. The one we're looking for is in the sensing category, and it's key whatever you want. I'm going to use the up arrow is pressed. Then, so this is a condition. If the up arrow is pressed, I want my mouse to move 10 steps in whatever direction the mouse happens to be pointing at that point in time. So I'm going to add another if statement, and Scratch will cycle through that forever loop, doing all the different commands in around about 30 times per second. So now I'm checking if the down arrow is being pressed, and in this case I'm going to go backwards, so minus 10 steps in whatever direction. Now if I move forwards and backwards using the up and down arrow, my mouse begins to come to life and starts moving around. However, we don't just want to move backwards and forwards. We want him to rotate a little bit. So we can move left and right and spin around the whole stage area. So I've added another if block. And now if right arrow is pressed, I'm going to change the rotation. I'm going to change him so that he rotates 10 degrees every time I click on that button. And then if I do the left arrow, so again sensing, key pressed, and the key that we're going to be pressing is the left arrow. And this is going to give us quite a cool little way of moving our little critter around the stage. So turn left 10 degrees, so that's level. Now let's try it. Let's just go through and click play. And now I can move left and right. I can move forward and spin around, and that gives him a really nice critter-like mouse jittery jumping around the screen. So I can spin around and navigate around. Quite a cool little way of doing it. You'll notice I can't go off the screen. We'll do a little bit of something on that to stop him leaving the screen, otherwise we might lose him. So a final little bit of code that we can find in the motion category is where if on edge bounce down here. Sometimes you need to scroll down to find that. So now when I run it, my little mouse will run, but will literally bounce off the edges of the screens, which gives us a nice game area where we can't lose our main playable character. Let's do that quick save. File, save now, and then we'll move on to the next step. Now then, our mouse needs a little cat to chase him. So our antagonist is going to be our cat, and we've got a top-down cat there, which is quite cool. So we'll click on him and choose OK. Now the cat's a little bit big there, so we're going to use the shrink tool again to just shrink him down a little. Oopsie daisy, I've made him as small as the mouse. Now we can use the grow tool there and just click on him, make him a little bit bigger. Not too big, it's about right. So that our cat, I think he's a kitten, our kitten here can chase this mouse. So we need to build a little bit of code. So I've got the cat selected, and when the green flag is clicked, I'm going to use that forever loop again, so it's always checking, it's always doing the code between that's inside of the forever loop. And in this case, the cat is always going to point towards mouse 1, the name of the mouse. That will appear automatically in that little drop down. So whenever this is as I'm moving my mouse around the screen, then the cat is always going to point towards the mouse and then move 1 step. So there you see, as I move around the screen, our cat is now chasing the mouse wherever it goes, absolutely consistently pursuing my mouse as it runs around the kitchen and the screen. And oh dear, the cat got him. But the game continues. So we're going to have to write a little bit more code to detect when the mouse actually is caught by the cat. But here we can move around, and you can see there, if I just stop that, the cat is now pursuing the mouse. So the code there, very simple. Make sure you've got the cat selected. Make sure you're on the scripts tab. And then when the green flag is clicked, forever point towards mouse and move 1 step. Quick file save as, and then we're ready for the next bit. Now, we need to add some cheese, and we're not going to add that to the backdrop. It's not really a background item. We want the piece of cheese to be something that the cat can eat, but also the cat, if that runs over it, can make the cheese disappear. So in our game, we've got a bit of a chase going on to see who can get to the cheese first, and the cat can go over the cheese and gobble it up so the mouse can't get it. So I'm going to use the drawing tools. So I clicked on the little paintbrush and gone into the drawing area. And then I've selected the line tool, and you just click and drag. You'll get better at this. Initially, don't worry too much about the graphics. You can find some good images on Google Images, and you can import those. But here I'm just going to show you the basics of the tool. I'm just clicking and dragging and drawing up my chunk of cheese. And every time I click and drag, it will draw a line. As soon as I let go, it drops the line, and I'm just drawing and connecting up the dots. Now I'm going to use the fill tool. I'm going to use a slightly different orange here to fill it up. And oopsie daisy, where I've drawn my lines, they don't actually quite join up. You can see there as I zoom in. So I'm just going to fill in the gaps there to make sure that those areas inside the cheese are fully bound by my lines, so that when I use the fill tool, it doesn't fill the whole area. It just fills the bits of my cheese that I want to. So now when I click in, oopsie daisy, wrong color, choose the darker color, click. Oh, now this is interesting. It's actually highlighted, so I can use the undo color. It's actually, there we go. I'd actually clicked on one of the lines there and it had filled the whole line area. Now we're looking good. So I've filled those areas in. And now I'm going to use the circle tool, oval tool, to just click and drag and put some holes in my cheese. I do like holy cheese. So we're going to drag one there, make it slightly elliptical. That's it. A couple of holes on the top. And now my little piece of cheese, it's actually quite a big piece of cheese at the moment, starts to take shape. Drawing tools can be a little bit tricky. And don't worry too much about getting them perfect. And always use that little centering tool top right there to make sure that when you've drawn your object, that the center of that object is specified. Otherwise, you get some random things going on, and when you're not quite over the object, then your mouse will start saying that he's eaten the cheese when he hasn't even touched it yet. Drag him into the corner there. Now that's looking pretty good. My nice little piece of cheese. I've used the shrink tool. Now we just need to have a little look at making this piece of cheese appear in the game. We don't need to create hundreds of pieces of cheese. We're going to have when the green flag is clicked, we've got a forever loop again. Very important, that forever loop. And then we're going to wait an amount of time. And I'm using from the operator's code block a pick random. So a random number, and in this case, You can see there it's a little bit tricky to get that to slide into the bit, but as it's highlighted you can then drop it. If you do it in the middle, it's not quite there, so it's always just at the beginning of that block. You drop him into the circle, and I've done pick random 1 to 5 seconds, and then in the control section I've got create clone of myself. So it's going to create a clone of that sprite, our cheese sprite. And then when I start as clone, so when the piece of cheese is created, we've got a set of actions. Now the first thing I'm going to do is actually when the green flag is clicked, I'm going to hide the cheese so you can't see it. Then it's going to wait a period of time and then create a clone. And then it's going to go to a random position anywhere on our stage. So go to from the motion tab and go to pick random, and we're going to go -200 to +200, which is our left to right, X being the X-axis, left to right, and our Y, we're going to use a pick random in there as well, and that's our vertical, our up and down direction. And here we're going to do -180, which is right at the bottom, to +180. Which will be right at the top. So that will mean that it will pick a random X and a random Y position on the stage for our mouse to chase and try and catch. We've got to remember to show it, because when we click the green flag we hid the sprite. And this means now, over a period of time, we will have random pieces of cheese arriving in random locations on our stage, which is ideal. And you'll use that random block a lot in your games to, keep the player guessing where it might go. And now we need to check, throughout playing the game, forever, all the time that the game's going on, as soon as that clone is put there, we need to check to see if the piece of cheese is touching the mouse. And if it is, then we'll play a little pop noise, and then we will delete this clone. So it's as if the little mouse has eaten the cheese, and that piece of cheese will then disappear. However, we also need to check to see if the cat ends up touching a piece of cheese. So if touching cat, then in this case, we won't play a noise. We will just delete that clone. So now if the mouse touches it or the cat touches it, we're going to automatically delete that clone. And then based on that random block there, another piece of cheese may have already arrived, or we might be running around trying to avoid the cat, waiting for a random piece of cheese to arrive. So now we've got a little bit of cat and mouse going on, plus trying to catch up with the pieces of cheese that are appearing on the stage. If the mouse eats it, it plays a pop. If the cat, it just deletes the cheese and prevents our mouse from being able to catch it. Let's give it a go. So there's my cat chasing the mouse. I've got to stay out. There's a piece of cheese, just appeared from nowhere. I can now go and eat that, and I can now run around. Oh, he almost got me, almost bounced off in the edge there. There's another piece. Oh, I've got 2 for 1 there. There's one down in the corner. There's one straight ahead of me. Now they're peering at, there's a little bit of a pause there. Yeah, so piece of cheese, he's almost cornered me. I think the cat touched me then. I think that there's definitely caught me there, or did I just get away? So we've got to build a bit of code that is going to check to see if the mouse actually catches us. Or rather, I actually want to check for a piece of code to see if the cat catches the mouse, not the mouse catches the cat. So we've got our code in place for the cat. He's chasing after our mouse wherever it goes. And now we want to write the code for the mouse, because we want the mouse to disappear when the cat catches the mouse. So it's the actual piece of code that we're going to put inside of the forever loop on the mouse to check if at any point the mouse is touched by the cat. So we're going to use the sensing block, touching. And if I click in there, I've got a drop down and I can choose my cat sprite. So if touching cat, then I essentially want to hide the mouse. I'm not deleting the sprite or anything. I'm just hiding it so it doesn't show up on the screen. Drag the hide block in there. So 30 times a second, this forever loop is going through, checking that we're moving the right way. The right keys are being pressed. And if touching the cat, it's going to hide it. And then I'm dragging a control block in it to stop all code running in our entire game, essentially ending the game. So let's have a look. I press the green flag, our little cat's making his way towards the mouse. And as soon as they touch, The whole game finishes. The mouse has disappeared. My control keys don't do anything anymore. But now I've got a problem. The mouse has stayed disappeared. So there's something I need to add at the start to make sure no matter what happened in the game, at the start, the mouse is always shown. Now he appears down in the bottom left-hand corner. Perfect. I've got my cheese appearing. And if I touch even the whiskers of that cat, he's got me. Game over. End of game. So we get our games coming together now. We can chase each other around. We can pick up the cheese. My gut feel now is we need to add a score to see how many pieces of cheese we're actually collecting. We're going to introduce a concept for the score that allows us to store the number of pieces of cheese that we've caught. And it's called a variable. It's found under the data code block. So I'm going to create a new variable. Click on make a variable and type in the name for it. We're going to call this cheese. And the variable is just like a box. It's like a container where you can store information. In this case, every time that we touch a piece of cheese, we're going to increase the value in that box, that storage, that variable. We're going to increase it by 1. Now you saw there as I double click on the score there, I can change the different formats. So we're just going to have the number there. And then we need to decide where the piece of code goes. And it seems to make common sense that, when we're touching the mouse, the piece of code is actually on the cheese. So I'm going to add a little piece of code, now we've made that variable, to change the variable cheese by 1 immediately after the little pop sound has gone where he's eating the cheese. So change cheese by 1. Let's try it. So I'm waiting for a little piece of cheese to arrive. There it is. Let's see what happens to the score. Bang! It's up to 2. Oh, I got 1 by luck then. I just drifted over it. So we're at a score of 2. Oh, that's a tricky one. It's right behind the cat. Should be able to get it. Yep. Now we're up to 3. And now the cat's just going to get me. Brilliant. So our variable has increased. But if I start the game again, our variable has stayed on 3. So it's remembering that inside of the program every single time that we run it. So we're going to have to do something. It's called initializing the variable. Basically, when the green flag is clicked, we want to set the value of our cheese variable to 0 at the beginning of each game. There you go. Click on the green flag, resets to 0. Where's my cheese there? Oh, tricky, careful. There we go. Got it. Yeah, got 1 point, got 2 points, got 3 points. That was a nice one. And the cat's got me. And you can see there the variable's changed to 3. When I start the game again, it resets to 0. Genius. Now, how do we keep track of the high score? Now we're really getting somewhere. So let's have a little look at adding a new variable. We want to keep track of the high score. So as we're playing each game, every single time we play, the high score will update only if the score, the number of cheeses, is higher than the current high score. So click on make a variable, type in high score, choose OK. And then just move that a little bit out of the way. In fact, what we're going to do is we're going to make the high score appear and only appear if you break the high score of the game, the current high score. So we'll leave it in the middle. And then we're going to do a little cheeky bit of code in the data area which hides that variable high score. We want to set the high score to 0, so it starts from 0. Actually, that's a little bit of a mistake. I'll come back to that in a second. So we're hiding the high score, and then we need to do a test at the end of the game, just before the stop all. You notice there the if statement went around that, so I've got to shift that out of there. So if, and then I want to check to see if the pieces of cheese is greater than. So I now drag from the data area, I drag the cheese variable into that first block. And if the cheese is greater than our high score variable, then I want to let the high score, so change the high score to be whatever the value that is stored in cheese was. So I can do that with the set data block. So set high score to cheese. But that will only happen if the number of cheeses that I've collected is higher than the game's current high score. Now, as soon as we do that, we also need to show it because it was hidden. So I'm going to show the variable high score. So that's all in place. So a nice little code. You use that again and again. Now, here's the trick. I want to get rid of that set high score to 0. Otherwise, every time we start our game, the high score would be reset to 0. We want it to remember the high score. So let's try. So my score is reset to 0. I've got to run around now and collect some cheese. So I've got 1 piece of cheese. I've got 2 pieces, 3. I got 1 by accident there. That was good. So I'm on 3. Now a high score, boom. Yay, I beat my high score. Our high score is 3, and that is the number of cheeses that we got. And now if I run around and try and collect another piece of cheese, I've got 1 there, but if I get caught, you'll notice the high score doesn't appear. So we hit it at the start, and only if the high score is beaten does the actual high score display in the game. Slowly but surely now, we've got a game that's coming together quite nicely. We've got our score, we've got our mouse, we've got our cat chasing the mouse, we've got the mouse collecting up the cheese. What I'm going to do now is have a look at the code for the cat and make the game get harder as the score increases. So I'm going to create a little algorithm using those operators. I've added the plus operator and a divided operator nested together. Get that set up, and what I'm going to do is basically say the speed of the cat is going to be 1 step plus whatever the score is divided by 2. So the higher the score is, the quicker the cat is going to go. Not so it goes absolutely crazy fast straight away, it'd be too hard. But slowly but surely that cat is going to get quicker and quicker. So I've replaced those operators inside of the move block. Now as I run around and try and catch some cheese. Come on, cheese. There we go. Well, let's put it right around the other side. Grab that quickly. Now, he's now moving slightly faster. So 2 plus 2 divided by 2. So he's going 2 steps instead of 1 step. And boom, he caught me. So this game is going to get harder and harder as we go along, which is kind of cool. Now we're going to add a little bit, and I always like to add this to the backdrop, is we're going to add a little bit of code to give it a bit of atmosphere. We're going to create a little music track in the background. I quite like some of the music loops in here. So we're going to choose Dance Around. As you can hear, quite a funky little tune to give it some atmosphere. So I'm going to choose OK on that. That adds that sound to the background so that we can then choose it from our code. And if I now choose play sound, don't choose the first one, choose the second one. So play sound, dance around until done. That ensures that the entire loop is played rather than trying to restart it 30 times in 1 second. Now, when we play our game, we're going to get a little bit of background music to keep our user entertained as we go through. So let's have a little look at adding another sound. And here, when the cat finally eats the mouse, we want to have a little meow. So choose meow and choose OK. That adds the sound to the sprite, so we can then choose it from the code block. And I'm going to add that just down at the bottom here, that as soon as if touching cat, then make the meow sound. It's going to do all that bits and pieces. So right at the end there, just before the stop all, it can't come after the stop all, otherwise it wouldn't run. We're going to put that in there. Let's give it a go. So my cat starts chasing the mouse. We've got the background music going on. I'm catching my... Oh! I didn't hear anything, did you? So it seems to have worked. The game stopped, but it didn't make a noise. That's another area where you need the play sound until done. The stop all kicked in and stopped all the code from being run. Now as we run around, collect a little piece of cheese and get caught. Now you could hear the little meow as he caught the mouse. So great, we've got background music. We've got some sounds when we eat the cheese. We've got a sound when we get caught. It's up to you now to take this game and maybe add some backgrounds and make it even better and better. Really hope you've enjoyed it. Good luck with the rest of your games, and we'd love to see some of the games that you create as you take these further and further. If you have any problems, any questions, just get your parents to email us. Always willing to help and help you to get unstuck if you get stuck. Anyway, Ta-ra for now, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks with some more projects.